Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Fan Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Uh-huh. So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
Madness Entertainment Group presents the Madness Comic Network with original programming and additional comic-related content.
Hey, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you are a fan of comic books, if you're a fan of comic book conventions, and if you like meeting comic book creators and getting comics and comic-related stuff, then you need to make your plans to attend Daytona Beach Comic Con. This year's show is September 9th and 10th. Silverline will be there, so you should make your plans to be there too. We'll see you there. If you like comics and find yourself in the Orlando, Florida area, doesn't everyone come to Orlando at some point in time to see the House of Mouse? But when you're here, you need to make it a point to visit Coliseum of Comics, especially the one on East Colonial Drive. They carry Silverline comics, even a limited edition Coliseum of Comics version of our comics. So, when you go, be sure to ask for Silverline Comics and tell them we sent you. OCD stands for Orlando Collector Deviants. OCD, Steve and Trish, they're a family of geeks who promote geek things, particularly those around the Orlando, Florida area. They're big supporters of Silverline, and we think you should be supporters of theirs too. Go give them some love. If you are an independent comic book maker and you need to get your independent comics made, you need to look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our books, and they do a bang-up job. They're not only trusted by Silverline, but many, many independent comic book makers. Head on over to kablam.com and see for yourself just how easy it is to have your comic printed by them. And tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Kilber, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Join us each Wednesday nights as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Hello and welcome to That Silverline Show on Tuesday. I realized my microphone is in a weird location. All right, we're back. That's something I noticed. I love how in the intro, David and Cassisi, you both look like your it's like your security clearance photo, and meanwhile Jose and I just look like it's we're applying to be extras in Encino Man or something.
Oh no, I don't take enough pictures though.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that as well.
That's good. I like it. Anyway, so this is That Silverline Show on Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim TK. I am missing about 5 pounds right now. We'll see how long that lasts. But I'm joined, as always, by Cassisi.
Hey, Cassisi Harris. The new guy, penning an issue of Silverline team up with Tempest and Miss Fury.
Dope. And also by David Rios.
Hey, how's everybody doing? However.
Yes.
And yes. I'm not the new guy anymore, so there we go.
Perfect. Absolutely, yeah. And if you can't already, Kasisi is our regular feature, so he'll be on with us every week until we scare him away.
Not happening.
Yeah, I know it does. Yeah.
Is that what we did with Jose?
Yeah.
Is that what we did? We scared Jose away?
Maybe, I don't know. Jose is currently feeling a little under the weather today, so he is currently on drugs and laying down. So we'll catch him when he comes down from it all. But tonight we're talking about changing seasons, how you show the passage of time in a comic. There are, of course, several narrative tropes in writing in general, but also we will talk about visual elements that go into showing the changing of time, how things pass. And we are also joined by Kasisi's cat.
Yeah, sorry.
No, I love it.
You did give us warning, so I think we're okay on that.
It's fantastic. Before we get into it, I kind of have done the opposite of the narrative trope. I, instead of growing the beard to show that time has passed, I've removed the beard. I guess to show that time has regressed. Yeah. All right. Do
you want to talk about that we just successfully completed the Kickstarter?
It's being pulled up right now.
Just wanted to do a shout out and thank you to all the fans out there and everybody who backed the project. Made it a success. I know we had some stuff at the last minute, but somebody came in and just swooped the floor with it and got us kicked off. I'm excited because I got my my 2 covers out there, so
absolutely
that's great. I feel great about that. So I'm hoping that everybody likes them, and the rest of the book. I've been looking forward to the finishing of Cat and Mouse, as well as the Kayla stuff. But I've been following the Cat and Mouse since the beginning, so I'm pretty excited to see that completed as well.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, we have finished our Kickstarter for Double Feature Cat and Mouse, finishing the run here on Volume 1, and getting halfway through Volume 2 of Kalis. We finished at 99 backers, total of $5,578. So thank you everyone who backed. My cats are trying to murder each other in the background. We got we inched over the we kind of blew past the finish line at the end there. We were inching along and then just shot past it. So thank you everyone who was keeping us glued to the edge of our seats.
Thank you.
We were one backer short from our tier 3 stretch goal, but I'll take it. I'm happy.
Absolutely, yeah. But we will get these. Make sure to check your emails, fill out those surveys, so that way you can actually get your comics. As well, I'm Jake and Mouse. Remember, it's true. Well, it's new Volume 1, technically Volume 2, or
I can tell you that I put in, when I backed, I put in for one back issue comic, and I can tell you that's going to be Wolf Hunter. Wolf Hunter
awesome.
1.
Thank you.
I'm definitely picking that up. We talked about it a lot, and definitely picking that one up.
I hope you enjoy it. It is my little spy baby.
Exactly.
Thank everyone who backed us again. Make sure to check your emails, fill out the surveys. We'll get those to you as soon as they get out of the printers. My God, you good? I don't know if you guys can hear my cat.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You're advertising too. You're trying to get the word out.
Yes. All right. Anyway, we're talking about how you show the passage of time in comics through writing, through art, the entire medium as a whole. and of course, I'll probably end up mentioning some of the longer running names because for writing Superman or X-Men or something like that, you've had to show the passage of time very frequently, given just how long those books run. But I can open the floor to whoever wants to jump in first. Can you think of a time where a comic has shown the passage of time in a way that you thought was really interesting?
And I'll go first. I mean, I can think of 2 times. One is a Superman comic, and I think he was with Wave Rider. And at one point, Wave Rider, it's a splash page, but it's just a whole bunch of images of him and Superman because he pulled versions of him and Superman from every second, like in the future, to overwhelm, I guess, the time guys who were there. And so it was like a neat portrayal of, hey, sort of like if you watched Infinity War when Doctor Strange does the whole several versions of himself versus Thanos for like a split second and he gets owned, unfortunately. But it was just a cool moment. He just used time and said, I can just pull every version of myself and you from that time and overwhelm somebody. And then in a Ghost Rider issue I was reading recently, it was kind of converging timelines. So they were trying to show the past building up to a present event, and they just kept going 4 months ago. So tell this short little story. Present 3 months ago, present 2 months ago, present, and now we're here where we are. And I just thought that was a cool way to kind of give a backstory without overwhelming the reader. Trying to do that whole start from the very beginning and then go to now. You can kind of keep the action, tell a little bit of the past, keep the action, tell a little bit of the past, keep the action.
Yeah.
Wow. You're in a whole different realm. I'm thinking more of, no, you were more in the realm than I'm thinking.
I'm often
I'm thinking, you're thinking of the issues that are going through and showing. I'm like thinking more of, the series that are more, farther in time themselves. Not so much in a single issue where it's like, this person goes back and whatever. I'm thinking about things that are showing, like your Dark Knight Returns, where, the story is based so far, and your, Batman Beyond and stuff like that. And when I was thinking more of it, I'm thinking more of things like, a lot of the muted colors, a lot of the, you tend to get maybe a little more scraggly, whereas, as they're younger, you get everything more bright and more polished and all that stuff. So with passage of time, in a book, kind of what you're saying is, you picture the person that's trapped on the island, and everything is bright blue and sunny and all that stuff. But as you go on, you've got you get older, you're showing visually, like the beard coming in, the skin is not as bright and rosy as it is, so it's more dull and grayed, and the expressions are drooping a little bit more, some wrinkles that are coming in, and things like that as you go farther along. You go from your big bright, colorful book to more of your, maybe some like yellow tones and stuff like that, like, I don't know, or pastel-ish, faded type tones in the coloring and stuff like that, to show that it's just not bright anymore. And when you deal with some of the stuff like some of the comics with like Impulse, where you see the world that he came from, it's dark and overcast and stuff like that, and comes back in time to our time where your superheroes are glorious and all this stuff. That type of thing. It's more of I was thinking originally more of the the series and things like that rather than the trends, the transformation throughout a single issue of but it's both great, and I think you're a little more on topic than I was. So
I think both, and working hard because both require use of visual or literary tools, and both are skills that you need to develop. Kind of what I was thinking of was I think it was We Only Kill Each Other. I think it was World War II era comic, but set in the United States, where you would figure out where the timeline was based on flashing news articles, essentially. So as the series went on, or as an issue went on, you would like see the flash of like a news article, essentially like talking about like the situation in Europe and what's happening over there, to get your idea of what date and time is going on.
Like, is it a splash page, or is it just you have to look in the panel and you can see?
Sometimes both. Yeah, it's one or the other. Yeah, but yeah, I thought that was like a really neat way of just kind of cluing the audience in on where we are and what's happening. If we could also go on like just like straight visuals, then was it the Legion series, or was it one of the new X-Men series where they're dealing with Legion? Where essentially they're going into a place that Legion is holed up in late summer, like early fall, and you see the sun becoming more orange, and like the gray's getting grayer and darker as things are going on. And I thought this was really neat.
And think about the the Wolverine Sabretooth movie at the beginning, where you see James and they go through and it pivots through all the different time periods. Here they are, in World War II, and it's like as they transition and get older and all this stuff, the amount they can get. I mean, they don't get it's not like Captain America at the end of of Avengers Endgame and stuff like that, but they do slowly progress over time, get a little bit older and all that. So yeah, I think that's another great thing about, and that reference, like you were talking about, maybe it's not newspaper articles, maybe it's just more like identifiable things, like like World War II and stuff like that. So there's some other ways, some nice ways that they've done that as well. So,
and it's so interesting because when you think of like a moving visual medium versus comics like sequential, that you could completely pull off that very easily in like something like a cartoon or a movie. And I'm just trying to think of how you would do that same thing without it being too stale in a comic. And you could, you could absolutely do it. It's just, man, that would be so interesting to write, that out in a script and have the artist actually kind of pick up on it and do it in such a way that is so it impacts you the same way as that kind of visual does. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, like writing it, you mean you can if you're talking about like we mentioned before, somebody that gets stuck in a cave and they're trapped in there, and years goes by, forget the fact that they have to find food and all that, but that magically appears. But I mean, the amount of stuff that when you write it, the description of in the you can see things, you can describe things like the rocks that have weathered over time, and now you had something that's that was rocky, that's more sandy, and the pile up of just there's just lots of things that you can key in, like maybe there's water dripping, and over time that's forming and extending stalactites and things like that. I mean, there's tons of stuff that you guys as writers could put in to describe, that the artists will go through and jump on and bring out. So
And part of the problem is like your space, right? Do you have a lot of space to talk about a passage of time, or do you have a condensed space? And if
Yeah.
you have condensed space, that's when you're really problem solving to go, well, what can I tap into? And it's a lot of the visuals that you talk about, right?
Yeah.
Like a lake bed that is full one time and then dry with a little
Yeah.
bit of water the next, or how do you
Yeah.
convey that in the
Things like that.
shortest amount of time? That's
Yeah.
yeah.
One of my favorite things, kind of going back to the new X-Men, to show the passage of time with the team being together as like when they're introduced to others, going from being standoffish to when they start throwing in like their own like inside jokes or their own like razz and stuff like that. And, like essentially, you'll like feel the months that have passed in between the panels as you read through the series, doing small things like that.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I will now kind of open up for, well, actually, something I want to grab here first because David brings a unique perspective being a colorist. People who have been well introduced to comics or familiar with like basic color workings are probably used to the idea of seasonal palettes, even if they're not fully like ingrained in their mind. But showing the changing of seasons with color or showing the passage of time with color, what are some thoughts you have if someone wants something to look visually older than the panels came before it, or if you're starting something in spring and then showing it transition to fall, or like through summer and into fall, or something like that? What are some color decisions you'd make there?
It's kind of like what I had kind of touched on before. It's like you're playing around with brighter colors and stuff like that more in spring. Fall, you're shifting more towards the oranges and reds and yellows, things like that. When you start getting into things like winter, you kind of start to tone into maybe a little more of a blue tone, but a more gray tone and stuff like that. Because you're dealing with a lot of whites and things like that. So the last thing you want is typically to have if you're trying to really establish the scene, you definitely want to have a more muted, like winters and stuff like that. And just follow the scene. And spring and summer maybe a little more bright. You're thinking more blue skies and things like that versus more overcast and gray and things like that towards the getting in the winter months and all that. So plus you also want to kind of portray the mood in if you're being like a penciler and stuff like that, you would want to kind of possibly portray the mood is maybe a little more solemn at certain points of the year and a little more bubbly at other parts of the year. And your colors also go hand in hand with, how the artist has drawn the page. So you kind of pick up clues off of all over the place to, kind of, because it's kind of your job as a colorist to kind of bring everything home at the end. Writer throws it out there, starts the ball rolling, a penciler and inkler come in, do their thing to translate into the visuals and all that, and then colorist is supposed to come in and kind of tie everything together and get everything ready for the final result. So that's been built on by the other teams.
Absolutely. Yeah. And kind of thinking of the idea of maybe making something look older. I feel like a lot of the decision that like the most common decision is to suddenly make things become more sepia or like coffee stained looking.
Yeah, that's common.
Yeah, but that tends to be, for me, if I was using that would be something that I would. That was a good one.
All right.
if I was to start doing like the sepia colors and things like that, that to me would portray something rather than somebody getting older. That would be more of a older time period.
Sure.
So if you're talking about, somebody who's an elderly person who's remembering things from back in their 20s or whatever, that's where I would tend to do more of that, because you're establishing an older age rather than
Yeah.
something more modern with an older person, an elderly person or something like that. So.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll go bounce back up to you, Kasisi. So, also being a writer, I have an example which I'll get to when you circle back to me. But has it been a project you've written or a story you've written or anything that you've worked on where you've had to essentially write through a passage of time or cover the passage of time? And how do you go about that?
That is like the hardest part. There are two things I struggle with. I rush, right? And I don't give things time to breathe. And I almost feel like if I give too much passage of time, the reader gets bored. So a thing that I struggle with in basically everything that I write is how to convey that passage of time, because we do all this world building and there's so much that you want to explain in the world, but again, you have to tell a story, and that story happens in the world, and you can't do passage of time. But I think trying to think of what's the longest passage of time that I've done. It's very short, actually. I only give, I think, I did something called Bunkerborn, a comic that I wrote. And so, I had to explain why we were here. And that's the only long passage of time that I had was, hey, this kind of catastrophe happened, and that was only like a page or two, and then you jump right in. And again, the other struggle is, how do I condense? I think we're talking about like long periods of time, but the other struggle is, how do you convey things that are happening in a short period of time?
Right.
And I know that seems like easy. You just add a lot of panels to kind of accent everything that's happening, or you break the rule and do multiple actions in one panel to kind of show the speed of something. But that's the struggle too, right? And how other people, the other thing is, if you have more than one person in a scene, how do they value that passage of time that you're explaining?
Right.
For instance, if a kid is in the scene and they're a prominent figure, how are they valuing this passage of time? Do you even need to explain that? Especially when you get into longer periods of time, like on the current project. If you have a parent and a kid and they're separate, there is passage of time there, and it's valued from both perspectives. And how do you convey that, right? The reader will start chiming in like, so the parent is going to be away from a kid that long,
right?
And so that you have to make sense of the passage of time in a way that a reader can relate to. It's problem solving, I guess.
Yeah,
it's probably rambling on, but
no, that's all good stuff. Yeah, that was. Similarly, when I wrote Wolf Hunter, there was in the first issue in particular, we had to cover several months in the course of a few pages. The idea being the initial setup being the captain getting shot down, getting sent to a field hospital, not really recovering, and then being picked up by the intelligence service and sent off on his other things. And so recovering from a full leg amputation takes time. It's not an easy thing.
What? That's not a 4-day thing? Come on.
Yeah.
21st century.
In some cases back then, even then, just like the amputation took a while because I had to decide, like, is it worth cutting this off? Do we need it? And so we kind of did, going back to what Vic posted here before I had to take off, the idea of just throwing in the caption, and sometimes you stamp that in just to help in case anyone doesn't grasp it. But I did the exact dates along the way. But making use of characters' personal hygiene and composure was what I found to be the most compelling way to do that. Using Captain Willard's state of being, psychologically and physically, going from being top-notch RAF fighter pilot, kind of like the definition of World War II hotshot, to being in bed, looking like a mess, start developing post-traumatic tics. And you can kind of see that, this event has taken its toll and has time to set in. And that they're now in the middle of experiencing all this. And then cut forward again, and now he's able to walk on a prosthetic leg. He has his tics mostly managed and he's mostly cleaned up. But there's still, for the sake of being realistic, PTSD doesn't just go away. So tics are still there, but also it makes the character more compelling to show their struggles. So you can't really conquer fully tic, but you can find coping mechanisms. So showing those coping mechanisms in work and the character having a grasp on those coping mechanisms, that was, I found, to be the quickest way to show that, we've had 2-3 month periods back to back over the course of a few pages. And that was my experience with most recently writing a long period of time like that.
In only a couple pages too. That's pretty good. Yeah. That's
one of my favorite things. The new book I'm working on, which I can't really talk about, similarly has some pretty massive time jumps more frequently. But thankfully, it's written like an epistolary, so it's kind of in the style of letters, so you can jump around with the letters.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to be honest. I didn't have too many notes prepared just with the way work has been. But kind of open up again. When you are creating either time jumps or showing that time passes or doing bounces back and forth in time, there are some times where that can go wrong, or something can not sell, or you overselling or underselling something. So if anyone wants to give any examples of that, or any concerns you have when you're writing time, something you're always afraid you'll end up doing, and what your thought is and how you correct that.
I'll go.
Sure.
I'll go.
All right, go ahead.
I think sometimes, when you're taught, in a structured way, people a lot of times hate jumping. You obviously see things out in the media that use that very well, and you want to do that.
Yeah.
But at the time you have this fear, like, man, am I going to be able to execute, like starting at the middle of something and then hopping back and then hopping forward in a way that won't confuse the audience in some way. So I actually tend to, I haven't exercised that muscle a lot. I tend to want to be linear most of the time, and I'm exploring different ways, especially in the comic medium, of how you play with that time, bouncing back and forth without confusing people a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still working on that, but I try as much as possible to stay linear as I can, because I have the fear, and it's only a fear, that I'm going to lose a lot of people if I start bouncing.
Yeah.
Right? Or I create so many plot holes when I bounce that just don't bounce for right now and let it kind of
Right.
flow, right?
I get that.
I don't think I have that much influence on it. I set the pace, but I don't think that, if I color something wrong, I don't think I'm gonna detract the audience that much.
Sure.
They might get it and go, what? But I don't see them, kind of jumping out of the feeling and out of the design that the writers and the artists have done, because I say that's I want to say that's combined 85% of the storytelling. I'm just kind of trying to bring that home a little bit and hoping that I'm not distracting in my 15%. But you guys have a much bigger impact on that than I do.
Sure. I think my concern kind of does it works with. I feel like the colorist probably does the best job of this, of interacting with this, but kind of like you said, Cassisi, where if you're trained traditionally, every writer gets trained to not do flashbacks pretty much ever. But I'm gonna be honest, I love a good flashback. It has to be well done and well timed, but I love a good flashback. Also, I like French films. I like nonlinear storytelling. But I like doing it in a way that is a bit up my own butt. And be honest about it.
Okay.
So in one part, I like sandwiching flashbacks inside a pre-existing panel or doing things to show influence on a moment. The idea that something in the scene is triggering another thought. So there's one panel I wrote where a character is looking out of a window, and the flashback is happening inside the window. So the world around it, the character and the world life are in normal coloring and normal pacing, and then inside the window is a sketchy line style sepia flashback. I thought it looked great. However, I'm always afraid that I'm coming off super pretentious and that no one's going to get it, and that it looks like an Alan Moore wannabe.
So I'm curious. So in that same vein, though, so we're talking about the passage of time, and we're kind of locked into one person's passage of time. How do you handle parallel, the passage of time in two different spots?
Right.
Have you ever had to write that close together in the same amount of pages and panels? Right, you're sharing that parallel story on the exact same page.
I've had to do something kind of like that, and the way I did it was, what's that movie? With Tom Hanks. Was it Cloud Atlas?
So many. Oh yeah. I watched that one.
Yeah. The idea of doing simultaneous beats, simultaneous arcs, where one character's on a ship ride, another character's on a ship ride, one character's in an elevator, another character's in an elevator. Then you find ways to break that up. But I feel like you when you do break it up, though, you need to be very clear on whatever the last chapter is setting up needs to pay off the start of the next chapter or something like that. So someone says, the thing I wrote was a science fiction book. So if you cut to the Alien War Council, and one of them says blah 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 stuff, and it says it'll take 6 months for our fleets to reach human space, and then you cut to the next issue, and the fleet has arrived in human space. So then you kind of get that idea of immediacy of that when you cut to the human's perspective, you know that 6 months have passed since this decision was made back here, or something like that. I feel like really having good timing on your payoffs when you bounce back and forth, so something sets up and another one pays off, even if it's in two separate perspectives.
The way I approached it is to kind of link things. In the most recent, I linked a song that is playing at the same time. And how those lyrics are paying out visually on two different things, so they converge on the lyrics all the time. But I could see that there would be multiple. Yeah, if you can make even the dings, I could see if you can make your sound effects actually link to the ding of an elevator. One person is, landing, ding, and then one person is getting out as the door opens. I could see you doing multiple things to kind of pay that off in panels. So that's
absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Let's see here. And if any point anybody wants to post another question or go on a tangent, feel free here.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's see where. Kind of something like Cassisi mentioned here is the panel layout itself. Something we're gonna talk about. But using the panel layouts, what Cassisi mentioned, you might do one character doing multiple things in one panel, or One of my favorite things that I see a couple times is doing a splash page where a character is more or less walking through the splash page, doing something to show that's happening quickly.
Yeah.
In Wolf Hunter, to show the length of a post-traumatic tick, we did a series of panels where it's the same framing on the character, kind of 3 panels back to back to back. So it looks kind of weird, but the idea is that you're slowing down the time of this character looking down and seeing their hand trembling and waiting for it to stop.
Yeah.
So what are some of your thoughts on how you use a panel to show the passage of, a couple seconds or a couple minutes or anything like that?
Yeah, I wrote a character whose ability was to influence time one time, and I would distort everything else in a panel.
Nice.
So, to try and focus in on, hey, the only thing that is really active right now is me in this moment. And we actually changed the color. So we kind of made things like purple and gray around the main person, who is the only thing that is in detail in a frame.
Nice.
And then the other way is to, like you mentioned before, have kind of spectral images and multiple actions happening at one time in the panel, to where this is happening so fast that you're seeing this person progress through, and you're currently at the most detailed version of that character, right? Everything else is kind of like either off colored or a blur passage of that character throughout that one panel or splash or
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm kind of picturing a splash panel that's kind of a page within a panel. So you're inside the big panel. You can still follow that S. Actually, it's backwards for this on the camera, but follows that standard S, reading order. But I'm picturing more a wider time frame, not years and stuff. So you're starting up, in the top right with a young, healthy type person, and then as you transition along the page, maybe a few years have gone by, and you may see a picture of them with young children, and then as you come through, now you see them in graduation time. And then, as you transition, from all the way back, starting to go back to your right in the bottom right corner, you're now dealing with them, gray or with a beard, some peppered beard and stuff like that. So you have that full transition in a single panel, but, that's sweeping how your eye would normally do a page, and you'd read from, left to right, down, back to right. I could see, doing some kind of heavy time transitions through a single panel like that. That to me would be a great visual.
Yeah.
And some of the details, like you said, as you're going through, and granted, all right, this is, you're now looking, the current time is him as an older peppered person. Then obviously, as you said, Katsushi, is, you want all the detail and everything on that, but as your previous ones, you kind of want to have more of a faded, ghosted, memory transition as you went through. So that's what I'm picturing.
Yeah, that was cool. Another thought I had, kind of relating more so to oftentimes back to showing also multiple perspectives. But how many times have we seen a speedster in action where each panel has been a different character, but then the same speedster has been interacting with them in different ways or doing something each panel? Sometimes with like North Star, I think they did it once, where they essentially had like the same motion line going throughout the entire page, showing them bouncing back and forth. So each character essentially had their own second or separate reaction to the panel, but showing that North Star was in all these places at once. Yeah.
Yeah. I totally agree. I'm just picturing, Flash or whoever just bolting through time. So as you're watching, you're seeing, almost just duplicating the exact artwork for the character,
Right.
bolting through, speeding through, and then just changing your, putting everything on like when you're drawing it, doing it on a background layer, and then just switching out the background layer, as the time frame comes and the people that you're dealing with. And that can be done time-wise. That can be done location-wise. You could, if you're having, just say Flash running across the world, starting in America, and he has to end up in a different country. You can show the passage and the cultures as he's bolting through. I think that'd be very effective as well. Not just specifically time frame. You're hinting at the thing that time is going on, but it's going so fast that you're telling it visually through, the cultures that he's going through.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay. I think we've had the problem of being too on topic this podcast because we've just blitzed through these. So I got one last one. But how, as a reader, and also as a creator, how does the portrayal of time in comics influence the reader's emotional connection to the story, to the characters? So as a reader, how's seeing the passage of time, how's that influence your connection with these characters, with the story? And as a creator, what is the perception that you're trying to get? What's the connection you're trying to build?
And that's a hard one because I think that's engineered in the story that you're trying to tell, right? Especially, is this a series that you're picking up that has been going for a long time and you're trying to, create, take advantage of nostalgia? Are you trying to bring it into it? Like, I think that would influence how you use time, right?
Yeah.
Are you trying to bring something to an end in a very, impactful way? That influences how you use time too. How do you build that tension? But I think it's all engineered. It's kind of hard to answer that because, again, you engineer that based on the story you want to tell.
Yeah. I think kind of just like almost the only bit of it that's truly universal is the idea is that you're building a level of engagement or a level of almost like parasocial connection with the characters. The idea that by showing the time, you're creating space for the reader to essentially feel like they're experiencing the characters growing, or have that moment to build a connection that way. So when you do have those moments of emotional impact, you end up building so if you're deciding to add something in a very gruesome manner where you may spend a lot more time showing moments of growth or moments of time passage. So when you do decide to kill a character,
they're connected to them.
Yeah. Or if it is someone who's been a long running, like if I got my hands on X-Men, my passage of time would probably be a lot less involved because I'd be trying to show all the time that has come before. I'd be trying to show all the things that have happened before the story. We're just coming to know these characters know each other, these characters hate each other, all that stuff like that.
It's interesting how we're interpreting these questions.
Yeah. That also speaks is that art itself is all interpretive, and so then also as creators, it's all interpretive.
Yeah, it's really weird.
I was just thinking about a character and transition and stuff. I think a great example of that is Vandal Savage. You've got from when he first came, that whole prehistoric, and the whole look to everything he's got modern day, and then as he goes through and he starts going to the past of time, and he's pretty much he's still around. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he's still around in Impulse's time and all that. He's immortal. He's so you can get kind of vested in what he's gone through passage, what he's come from, and what he gets to, and then he gets to the end, and it's like, well, now what? Everything's everything's done. You know, it's like I think there's some through the different stories and animated things that I've seen with Banjo Savage. It's kind of something that's kind of stuck out with me. Is, you know, it's like he's immortal. He's just going through time. We're just living in small snippets of it. So
Yeah.
you know, how does that affect him and, you know, and his version of character, and how does he grow over time and things like that. You know?
Yeah, I think kind of in similar vein, where my connection to that is something like seeing Apocalypse, like when they did X of Swords, or Exodus in the X-Men, but I'll go with Apocalypse and X of Swords, where you show him kind of witnessing the creation of Earth from a different reality, and fighting in a different plane before the start of our time, coming over, watching everything, just kind of watching humanity grow and all other stuff, and then going to the future and going back. Like the fact that he's been around and is as close to an eternal as like an immortal being can be, and just the way that they portrayed that in quick succession really makes it feel like in like 100 years for him as a like yeah. And it adds a lot of. He's already a threatening character, but I felt like that added even more thread and more almost respect to his character, showing him standing through all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think it's there's some good stuff that they do where you kind of watch the transition over time, and you know, your people that are immortal, you know, there's going to be a point where they're just, you know, they've taken an active role. You know, when they start, they have a lot of hope for this, but you know, over time, seeing, you know, everybody continue to mess up, continue all that, kind of sours their views on things. I don't think that you could ever truly have a character that starts out as, you know, somebody that was, you know, hoping for the best in mankind and all this stuff, and then continues to live, you know, thousands and thousands of years and still maintains that same that same disposition. You know, time itself would wear on that.
Yeah.
That feeling and that, you know, thing. It would take an extremely strong character to be able to go through time with that
and be relatable. Like the thing is, would they even be relatable if you created a character like that? It'd be hard to make them relatable.
I think so. I mean, that's kind of what like the whole like experiment in Sandman was for Neil Gaiman, creating Morbius, this eternal being that's witnessed all of humanity's dreams, all of their like greatest hopes and all of their worst depravities. And he starts out being this entirely unrelatable alien person who is just there because it's his job. But it ends up having to spend the entire arc of the story relearning how to be engaged with humanity. So I thought that was like the closest you could get to that, and showing that passage of time, showing, you know, as the audience, you almost feel just as jaded with humanity by watching everything that they go through. It's the show, the book, it's wild. If you haven't read it, watched it, please do.
You gotta think that everybody hits this thing of, oh, come on.
Right.
I know. It's like, all right, I've seen enough. That's it. I've seen enough. I've tried to do this. I've had enough.
Yeah.
Either they walk out or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was kind of Exodus's deal. Living through the Middle Ages and the Renaissance and all this stuff in France, the French Revolution. And then at some point it's like, you know what? We gotta go, guys. This is too much.
I'd have to say one of the most boring jobs would be like the watchers.
Oh
You
yeah,
just have to sit there and just
Not
watch it and let it play.
yeah,
Yeah, that'd drive me crazy.
right. Or I mean, I guess another like different interpretation of that would be someone like the collector, where you've seen so much weird stuff in the universe that you just like, all
Nothing.
right, well, I'm gonna get some fun out of this, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, any other thoughts on showing the passage of time or how it affects the reader?
No, it's a difficult thing, right? Because time, when you say the passage of time, man, that's infinite, right? It could be like the split second, or it could be like years or millennia. And, just solving the problem of how to convey that passage of time in a relatable way, or maybe in an economic way, is fun, but it's hard, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes. Yeah, getting that, if it's short, just that candle burning, and as you go through, the wick is getting smaller and smaller and stuff like that. Yeah, it's or how heavily you do it. Is the entire structure. You're dealing with somebody who at the start is in a frontier town, and then it's going through, and now it's modern day, same scene, same everything, and then next thing you know, it looks like one of the future scenes, from the 30s and 40s, that has the the space vehicles going on, and the architecture that all the buildings look like little miniature rocket ships and all this stuff, and then eventually society comes around and turns on itself, that you end up start degrading, and you end up with your wasteland and all that stuff. There's fun stuff to do, all in the same same space. It could be the same plot of land that's over millennia has developed, and went from this point to that point. Maybe you start with the dinosaurs roaming the land and stuff like that. But there's some unique ways to play with it, but it is, like you said, it is difficult to get that. You gotta get that feeling just right.
Absolutely. Well, that is the last of my questions, so we're actually a little early in tonight's episode, but that's all right. I guess once again by saying thank you to everyone who backed our Kickstarter. We'll let you know when we have a new one. Remember to check your emails and fill out those surveys. Make sure you get your book. If you didn't get your book, it's probably because you didn't fill out the survey.
Which has happened a few times. So
it happens pretty frequently.
Yeah.
Let's see. We have a topic for next week, and it is somewhere in here. Next week we were talking about creating locations for comics. So kind of getting specific on the world building, going into creating a specific location, and the considerations you have to make when building one spot in a comic.
Okay.
Yeah. So
we have any information on Wednesday or Sunday?
Let's see. This Wednesday, they're talking about Famous First, going into first experiences, first comic book, first creator they've met, first published work, stuff like that. And the Sunday show this week is talking about superhero masks. How many are superheroes? The idea of secret identities and creating a hero that is either out in the public, like an Iron Man or a Booster Gold, or going completely secret identity.
Okay.
Yeah.
That'll be interesting.
Definitely. All right. So yeah, if we don't have any final thoughts, we'll go ahead and hit our outro. But before we do,
Make mine Silverline.
Silverline.
My name is Ross Ritchie from Boom Studios and Make Mine Silverline.